Should they pull out their investments and wait for the bottom to hit and get back in? Should they continue to dollar cost average throughout this whole market dip and rebound? Or should they just stock up cash and wait for the markets to start increasing and rebound to get into the market? What's going on, guys? This is the Neighborhood Money Podcast, a video podcast here to help you build a life you deserve. Drew, today I'm super fired up because we're going to talk all about what to do in a recession. You know, a recessionary time is a very concerning place for a lot of people, and rightfully so, because with recession, usually you see the stock market dip, meaning that your investments decrease. You might see higher unemployment. And so it's kind of just a kind of a scary time, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So hopefully in this episode we can walk through what exactly recession is, what the listener should start considering, whether it's in their day-to-day budgeting or in their investing life, and to really give some good ideas out there for them to take to both reduce some of the fear as well as to hopefully help them build a larger portfolio coming out of it.
This episode is very relevant for what's going on right now because if anybody's been following the stock market or just the prices at the grocery store, you can definitely see that we are creeping in towards what feels like a recession. If not, we're already in a recession. And it's quite funny actually, because I saw a meme the other day, and it was Matthew McConaughey looked like he was chain smoking a cigarette, and the caption was millennials going through their third once in a lifetime crash.
I know.
And I thought it was kind of funny. Just like they just seem to stack on top of each other right now. And you're not sure where the bottom's going or if it's going to be some, V-shaped recovery like at the beginning of the pandemic in that March of, what was that, 2020, where it came back crazy. And right now, where is that bounce going to go? What is the recession going to do? Are we going to move a little bit further down? So this episode is definitely very relevant, what's going on right now. And I'm hoping we can, kind of break it apart and kind of see where we're at.
You know, it's kind of funny that you bring up the whole millennial investing over the last, 15 or so years. And it's kind of wild, and it's probably very disheartening for a lot of millennials because depending on how old you are, you went through the 08, 09, coming out of that, having very limited job opportunities, get into COVID and that, and now another recession that we're most likely in, although it's not official. So, you know, if you are the millennial like Drew and I, there is no worries to fear. Like, just make sure you continue to work your plan. And hopefully, this episode can bring you some more information to help you along the way. But, Drew, let's start out with just the really basic level of, what exactly is a recession?
Yeah, if you're going off of what technical terms are, and I think we were talking about it earlier, it's 2 quarters of GDP decline, and GDP is gross domestic product. So pretty much it's production of our economy and what we're putting out. Are we growing as economy or are we shrinking as economy? And they're showing about that 6 months to be their arbitrary number to say, okay, I think we can technically say we're in a recession right now, and how can we handle this going forward?
So to dive in a little bit deeper, GDP growth or decline basically just means like when you go out and you buy, I don't know, a skateboard. Don't know why I thought of that, but if you go out and buy a skateboard, that adds to the GDP. Whereas if you stop spending money, you actually see a decline in the economy, again, measured by the GDP. And Drew, you're totally right. The fact that it's kind of arbitrary that they pick 2 quarters or 6 month time period to determine if we're in a recession. But if we look back at what happened for the first 3 months of this year or the first quarter of 2022, I think it was projected to have a GDP growth of around 1%, I think 1.1%. And actually, it came back at negative 1.4%. So just coming out of that first 3 months, we were halfway to being in a quote unquote recession. And now we're in June. And, you know, more than likely, you've seen all the news that has gone on, how the inflation is crippling the economy. And so there's a really, really high chance that coming out of June and into July, when you see the GDP print, which just means what the GDP is, that's probably going to come out as negative, meaning that we are going to be in a recession. And hopefully, this podcast will help you, or this episode of this podcast will help you identify that there are some opportunities there, but also to better prepare depending on how long this recession may or may not last.
Yeah, and talking about stuff and reports coming out today, actually, the Fed Chair Jerome Powell came out and spoke about rate hikes, and it's going to be another rate hike of 0.75 base points. So, pretty much 0.75%. They're going to be planning on increasing these rates again. I think before that report came out, or he came out and spoke, I think the rates were sitting at nearly, I think a 30-year fixed was around 6.28% for was the rate. So those are continuing to climb, because I think probably just a month ago they're about 5.5, somewhere in that range. As well as inflation came out, I think last week, and that was right around, I think, 8.6%. But as we said, it's going off of that CPI. So we're thinking maybe that's a little bit higher. So with these higher rate hikes, as we're talking about the decline in the GDP, we can probably continue to predict that GDP can or will continue to decrease, because with these higher rates, I think you'll start seeing people buying less and less, because at these interest rates, they don't feel like they want to go into uh or it's not as affordable to get into some type of a house or other type of vehicle.
The word recession to most everybody is extremely scary, specifically in the investing world. You know, as soon as you start hearing rumors of recession, you start seeing investors starting to pull their money, starting to stack up some cash. But Drew, what are some of the things what's the first thing that our listeners should start thinking about, if not already be doing, to help prepare for a recession, or if we are actually in a recession, to put themselves in a better position?
For me, it's something that we've talked about too, in previous episodes, of kind of doing that personal financial audit of yourself. And even though we said if you're starting a budget, or are on a budget currently, and if you have those monthly reports, or if you had quarterly ones, maybe it's time to move it up to that monthly, or you look at it on a closer basis and see if your budget's still in line with what the expenses are in your life. For me, for example, my haircuts have gone up about $10, and I know I had to adjust my budget for my haircuts now. Groceries have been continuing to be increasing, you know, constantly. So that's not really even a monthly thing to look at. That's almost a weekly thing, because that's how fast these prices are going. So I think the first place that you can sit down is your budget, and kind of seeing where is your cost of living right now, and what exactly is your budget. Is it actually mirroring what's actually happening out there? Are you constantly going over your budget? If you are, why are you going over that budget? And just looking forward and saying, what expenses should I potentially keep a close eye at, where it's fine now, but maybe it's something I can tailor back if this recession continues to go the way it's going, and it's potentially hurting your household more and more.
I couldn't agree. I think the budget is the very first place you go. And I think you do it for really two reasons. One, I think right now is a really good time to establish that emergency fund if you don't have it. So trying to get to that 3 to 6 months of expenses. But I also think that it's important to beef up your emergency fund if you're in a field of work where layoffs might be on the horizon. I know that's kind of scary to say, but it's a reality for a lot of people. And so if you are in a type of work where there is a good chance of getting laid off, then I think you need to beef that emergency fund up even more. And you can only do that if you're spending less than you make, and really keying in on that budget, knowing where your money is going to allow you to get there. And so trying to find places where you can kind of cut back. Obviously we're well aware that gas is through the roof right now. At least it feels like it. Maybe it's time to say, hey, you know what? Let's try to cut back on driving. it adds up over time for sure. So, and there's other areas in your budget that you could probably pick and choose to cut back and maybe save some money here or there to really start beefing up that emergency fund or establishing one. And I think, Drew, another reason why you want to key in on that budget, and we'll get into this in a little bit when we talk about investing, but it is to invest more. Recessions can be an extraordinary time to invest your money to truly build wealth for the long term. And that's because in at least half of recessions, the stock market has actually decreased in value, but it has always returned to what it was before and has exceeded the all-time high before. And so, Drew, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but if you look at a 30-year period of the S&P 500, the lowest return that there's ever been is 7%. And that's including the Great Depression, that's including the dot-com bubble, the COVID and all that stuff. So it might seem super scary to save money and start investing when you're seeing your numbers go down. Don't get me wrong, I get a little nervous there too. But if you can stomach it, and if you can find a little extra cash in that budget to put more into the market, then you're going to be better off in the long run.
With you talking about potentially beefing up that emergency fund, and one of the comments you had on there was you don't really know if your work is going to be hiring or they're going to be restructuring, which means you may be losing your job. And right now, there's such uncertainty and unpredictability into that. Like, for example, I was just looking in the crypto world, Coinbase was just laying off around 1,100 people.
Yeah, about
That
20%, right? It's like 18
that
or so.
yep, that BlockFi that you used to go through, they're having some legal issues, and now they're actually laying people off. But then there is Kraken Exchange, which is another crypto exchange, and they're still trying to fill over 1,000 people. So companies that are in the exact same industry and doing about the same type of deal, some are hiring, some are restructuring. So there is really that unpredictability of that. Outside of that emergency fund, going back to a potential a personal financial audit of yourself, is this might be a good time to re revisit your net worth. How much debt do you have right now? How much are you putting towards it? Is this something you can continue if things go bad? Are there some debt that are on there for enjoyment that you maybe have to liquidate at some point? And to kind of piggyback on top of that, what type of future expenses are really coming up? And those are something to really think about as well. If you're in a fortunate position where you're able to do things to your house or do things to your car or go on trips, these are other things to reevaluate in your with this ongoing potential recession. Is, do I need to do that house project this year, or can I wait a couple months and maybe that can help better predict what I want to do with my money or how I can live on this day to day? So I think that's a nice piggyback on top of that personal financial audit, is revisiting your net worth as well as potential upcoming expenses that you might want to do but maybe you don't have to do.
Drew, I'm a big debt-free guy beyond like the mortgage. So I think if you can reduce your debt right now before times potentially get even worse, I think that's well, one, I think that's great in any type of environment, but I think right now more than ever, getting debt free or reducing your debt is super important because we've done episodes before when we've looked at like the average car payment being like 650 or something like that, right? And just think about $650 you have each and every month in a whether you're putting that into investments or you're beefing up that emergency fund or you're just having it as extra cash laying around because things might be getting more expensive. Reducing that amount of debt is going to be crucial, specifically in times like this, because it just opens up so much extra cash flow each and every month.
Showing that extra cash flow that you might have, it brings me up of an episode we had in the past with Chris Hanna and just his budget style of these digital envelopes of having multiple bank accounts. But one of his bank accounts in his budget was for education and for potential future business ventures. And I think that is a very positive thing to do. I think it's something that maybe everybody should set money aside for, because if you're coming into a recession, you don't know what your company may be doing with you. Maybe having that extra cash on the side might help you start up that side hustle you've been wanting to do. It might help you want to take some courses that educate you on that side hustle you want to do, or just continue to grow in your field of work and your career to help you be more valuable to your company. So I even think not only cutting expenses and putting everything towards investing, monetarily wise, you have to remember to invest, I believe, in yourself, because that will help you be more valuable either at your career or being able to start something on the side and slowly grow that into something where you're no longer dependent on an employer.
Couldn't agree more. Investing in yourself is the number one best investment you can make to really improve your life. But Drew, most people are probably tuning into this episode to listen to us talk about what the heck should they do from an investment standpoint. How should they manage their money? You know, should they pull out their investments and wait for the bottom to hit and get back in? Should they continue to dollar cost average throughout this whole market dip and rebound? Or should they just stock up cash and wait for the markets to start increasing and rebound to get into the market? So let's kind of walk through all of that stuff, Drew. But right now, the S&P 500 is officially in a bear market, which means that it is down 20% from the all-time high. And in a bear market like that, in my opinion, again, this isn't financial advice, but this is an excellent time to invest and to really start investing a little bit more if you can open it up within your budget.
One of the articles I just read from CNBC said that the average bear market lasts 359 days and can take up to 3 years to hit those all time highs again. So, if this is like an average bear market, get ready to continue to dollar cost average, in my opinion, because if it's a slow run back up, there's a very, very difficult chance to be able to predict that bottom, in my opinion. There's some people that always say, well, if we're in a recession, we're in a bear market, I should liquidate, have a lot of cash on hand, take all my investments out, and then time that bottom perfectly. So then on the ride up, I make so much more money. And the truth of that is it's extremely, extremely hard. And dollar cost averaging is extremely easy and a lot less stressful. And, really in the long run, you'll probably end up coming out with very, very similar returns if you are consistent. Because if you're somebody that wants to pull things out now, I am willing to bet that you're somebody that's willing to pull money out in the future next time you see some huge dip like that. And that's when you might get bitten in the rear end.
I think dollar cost averaging throughout any type of environment is truly the way to go. I mean, there's a ton of statistics out there that prove that DCA or dollar cost averaging will put you in a better position than trying to time the market. Drew, actually, today I was listening to a YouTuber and he was talking about how, and I'm going to get some of this wrong, but we'll get the gist of it. But if we look over the last 100 years of the stock market, just to beat the average. So, meaning that you would perfectly time the highs, you would perfectly time the lows to get in and out. You would actually have to do that correctly 78% of the time to be just the average of dollar cost averaging. And that's an incredible amount of accuracy that you have to be right to just beat the average. So I think that right there just says, hey, if you are dollar cost averaging, it's a proven strategy to have very good returns over the long run. And if you're not dollar cost averaging, well, maybe you should start considering it.
Since we are on the topic of investing and people listening have invested time into this episode so far, I should say, if you're liking this episode, hit that like button and subscribe. I know this is quite the dirty plug that I'm putting in here right now, but I just have to say it felt like it was fitting with investing stuff. But no, I have to say it's so difficult to time the market. And with the valuations of companies that you have seen over these last 3 years, there's not much rhyme or reason for it. I think finally, since it says we're in a recession, but if you do zoom out, we're pretty similar to what we were a couple years ago. And I think now these valuations are starting to make some sense, but I think they're now at valuations of pre-COVID. And I think these valuations still have room to slip to the downside, and the reason is I don't think it's demand is their problem, it's supply is their problem. So with supply shortages constantly happening, they're going to have a hard time selling a lot of these products. I think there's going to be, or there's already labor shortages. I don't know if this workforce has moved uh once they've left one of their industries, they've just went completely into another one. So there's a big struggle with getting enough labor in, and between supply shortages, labor shortages, increased wages, and then increased cost, I think there's going to be less and less product and services being sold over probably the next year or two until we can get some of these issues figured out, or at least hit some type of a plateau and have some direction in this economy. So I think those are some really big things to think about. Is get ready for, I think, this market to continue to drop, but have some faith in your dollar cost averaging to be able to get it automated, get it out of your mind, and get returns.
You talking through all of that stuff around employment, supply and demand, that kind of stuff just starts making my head spin. I'm like, man, I don't have the time to actually start thinking about all those things and starting to understand, what individual companies are going to do based on that type of information and how well they're going to perform. And it doesn't even matter how well the company performs. There was I forget who it was today. They just had their earnings call, and they, missed earnings, and their stock bumped 15% after that. So, and then you have like Facebook that dropped 25%, and they were in the same situation. So it's really hard, right? When you look at individual companies and what they're going to do when you're trying to invest within a recession. So so my strategy has always been and will continue to be just dollar cost averaging into a really strong index fund like VU or VTI, which is just basically an S&P 500 index fund, not financial advice, of course, but doing so, you get exposure to a broad range of companies, and you don't have to worry about all of these different types of metrics, specifically if you just don't have time to do it. Now, Drew, I know you're a little bit different because this is actually your work and you look at this kind of stuff. And so you spend the time on fully understanding what some of this stuff is. And so, but for people that don't have the time or don't want to take the time out of their day to really understand how companies might react to the given environment, I totally think index funds are the way to go. And I actually like this rule of thumb. It's a 90-10 rule, and that's 90% of your stock market investments are going to go into index funds. And then if you really want to pick stocks and you kind of just want to play around with it, because let's be honest, the recession is a really good time to find some very undervalued stocks, using that 10% of your portfolio to try to pick those winners. It allows you to have a little bit more risk on the bucks and allows you some more opportunities to find those undervalued companies, but not putting your total portfolio at in trouble or at risk. And so you're going to still continue diving into those index funds. Just a general rule of thumb. Thought it was interesting when I found that one. So
Yeah, very cool rule of thumb. And with that 10% of that portfolio, maybe some of that can go into crypto, what we always talk about, because right now, uh, Bitcoin, uh, what I just see it at like 22,000. You might, I don't know if you see it got any lower or not. And right now it's getting real close to some support lines, which means like if it breaks these lines, we could see a drop maybe closer into like the nines and 10,000s. And if it hits okay here, then I still think there's a lot of great upside to it. It's just so early for this technology. And, if you didn't want to just play around with just the stocks, you want to diverse into something, crypto is never a bad option, in my opinion, because I think even though it's a wild, wild west, I think there's a lot of great gems out there. And just figuring out the technology for me is really entertaining. I love diving into these other random companies or talking about how they look at our economy, really, because you really get into these crypto projects and they just want decentralization, and then they start picking holes at the economy and our fiat currency we have now. And it's really opened your eyes to see how the whole machine and mechanism works that we're living in. And it's just something that you don't really hear about unless you're with one side playing the devil's advocate.
Completely agree. I love Bitcoin specifically as my alternative investment outside of what I do with my S&P 500 index funds. Drew, you and I were talking before this episode, and I was telling you how I am like so close to just pulling the trigger on my video game collection and just dumping that into Bitcoin because you're right. Bitcoin is 22,000 right now from a high of 69,000. I probably got that slightly wrong. So it's way down. And if you start looking at and understanding crypto and specifically Bitcoin, you're going to see these large swings. And if you truly believe in the type of project that you're investing in, I personally only invest in Bitcoin now, but I love and I truly believe in the long-term viability of it. And I just think that the prices right now are so enticing, and that's why I'm starting to put extra money into Bitcoin in addition to what I've been doing before. And I totally think that this recession, this period of time, is really an awesome opportunity for those investors that, like us, Drew, love the space and truly believe in the long term nature of it.
I really want to see where a lot of these big Bitcoin guys are going to be putting their money because, there is a lot of conviction behind Bitcoin, but then sometimes you don't necessarily see, like, you don't put your money where your mouth is. And I think sometimes I even see that in myself. And these bigger guys, they'll put, 1%, 3% of their portfolio in it and be huge, huge Bitcoin guys. But then it's also how much conviction do you actually have towards it when you're only putting 1 to 3% of your portfolio into it. But then again, these people that are talking about that 1 to 3% of their money could be, $300 million or, $30 million. But with these prices continuing to decline and these prices look so enticing, I wonder if they will beef up some of their holdings in a lot of these crypto projects because these prices don't come around too often. And after this one's gone, I don't know if you'll be seeing it many times in the future again.
Just one word of caution. I know I went pretty talked pretty highly on Bitcoin, and you can maybe put that across all cryptocurrencies, but it is so new, and so be very aware. There hasn't been the history of for any of these types of cryptocurrencies, and so there is still that risk of basically losing everything. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Huge
Don't
risk.
get me wrong.
Yeah.
I truly believe in Bitcoin in the long run, but when you compare it to things like index fund, S&P 500 index fund, that has a ton of history and it has always rebounded. So it's a fairly safe investment over a long period of time. Where when you get into these newer type of investments, you're still taking on more risk. And so, Drew, I'm glad you brought up like the 1 to 3% of your portfolio. I totally think that's very appropriate because the asymmetry of return in I'm going to talk about Bitcoin because that's what I know most about. But the asymmetry return of Bitcoin, meaning that the upside it has much more potential than the amount that you could lose. It's really second to none. You're not seeing that anywhere else in the market. But word of caution, that these things are still very volatile. They're still new. They're risky, and so just keep those things in mind if you are one that's considering investing into them.
And even some of these random altcoins that they might call them or meme coins, I mean, those are some areas too where they are extremely risky. And I think sometimes people can get a bad taste in their mouth because you hear about one rug pull and 5,000 projects or one rug pull and 20,000 projects. And then that's the only thing people think about. So there definitely is a word of caution when it comes into crypto. And as I'm talking through this, I'm just wondering if maybe that's why a lot of these big guys only want to put 1 to 3% into it because it is. kind of that wild, wild west right now with no regulation. And they may be worried about if there is some regulation that comes out, it might put a lot of these random altcoins or Bitcoin, it might classify them differently, which then would affect their taxes differently, would affect the way they can withdraw, the way that the crypto project performs and develops. And I think that is probably, as I'm talking through it, a huge reason why you only really want to put 1 to 3%, because without the regulation behind it, there is still that chance for maybe that downside is coming. But I would have to agree 100% with you that the money that you put into it, I think there's much higher upside than there is downside to it. And in the market right now, if you're talking about a Facebook after earnings dropping 20%, that's unheard of. And you would want to be buying Facebook at its all-time high a couple times ago, or I mean, a couple months ago, because, or year ago, whatever it was, because you might be feeling the same way that you would be if you got in a crypto project, but just because it's in the stock market, you feel better about it.
Just to wrap up kind of this episode, I think it sounds like right now we both view this recession, specifically because we are in a bear market, a pretty good time or a pretty good opportunity to start investing, continue investing, or maybe beef up your investing. It's a really, really good time to drill in on that budget, see if there's some room for you to beef up that emergency fund. And again, if there's some extra wiggle room in your budget to put more into investing, because we're seeing prices right now that are pretty low, and whether it's the S&P 500, whether it's individual stocks, or even in the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency space, right now might be a very, very good time to invest at lower prices. And because if history repeats itself, which it tends to do, we're going to see everything rebound, and you're going to be better off in the long run. And so I think with that, Drew, I think that wraps up anything. Do you have any other thoughts to, pull together this main segment?
Only other thoughts I really have on it is I don't think this is a time for you to be overextending yourself. So if there's a chance that you can really predict where your next year or two are going to be, really try to plan for that the best to your ability. Don't overextend yourself. And if you have some extra cash, you can find some extra cash. Why not get some stocks on sale? The stock market is one of the only places that goes on sale and people are mad about it. Granted, everybody likes making money, uh, but that short term always kind of hurts. So like nobody likes the short term sale, but you'll be happy you did it in the future, because you're going to be looking at these graphs if you didn't and saying, I wish I bought that dip. I wish I bought that dip. I wish I bought that dip. Uh, so if you are doing some type of dollar cost averaging, I would say just don't worry about what you're seeing on TV. Don't worry about what you're seeing in your portfolio. Continue to be consistent on what you're doing and just trust the process and try not to stress about it.
Drew, recessions can be doom and gloom, but that doesn't mean that we have to have doom and gloom in our neighborhoods each and every week. So, what's going on over in your neighborhood this week?
Nothing too doomy and gloomy. I mean, it was pretty hot today. We don't have the AC units at the house yet. I think we've dialed in on where we want to go with that direction. So it got a little hot in the house. I think it was like 78 upstairs,
Drew,
but
Drew, Drew, I think you have to tell our listeners what your genius idea is to make up for not having AC units.
oh yeah. So for me, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but maybe my wife would. And so I saw like something online where you can get like a 5 gallon pail, and then you can put like ice in the bottom of it, or if you froze milk crates, and then you cut like 3 holes in that 5 gallon towards the top with some piping coming out. And then on the top cap that's closed, you cut a hole for a little fan, and then that fan blows down that cold air and shoots it out. So, in my mind, I feel like that would be just fine. But then, as you brought up, uh, it probably would be the best aesthetic having like 4 little 5-gallon pails around the house shooting out some ice water.
I think
So,
I think
ice air.
I think your wife would absolutely love the aesthetic of these 5-gallon pails with these makeshift holes and water leaking out of them. Would be just
I could
prime to the new aesthetic of your remodel.
I could make them. I mean, they could be white, and then that would be kind of like fitting in there, I think. So, uh, yeah. So I don't know if I'll end up doing that.
Do you think that
I
actually
there.
works? It's
I
got
don't
to,
know why it
right?
wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you just have like you're moving cold air from an area out of an area. I don't know. I feel like it'd work. I don't
If you
know
didn't
like
learn
how cold it would get.
anything in this episode of the Neighborhood Money Podcast, you have now know that it moves cold air from one area to the next and it makes the other area cold.
I mean, I don't know how else it would work. Yeah, so I don't know if I'll be doing that, but downstairs it's nice and chilly, so I've been like fine down here, and then my wife upstairs was a little warm, and but she came down here. We got a little play pen for our kid down here that just came in. He's like been crawling
Nice.
now
Yep.
and doing a lot of like sitting up, and so now we can't like put him down without
Right, right. You have to keep them
like
contained.
watching. Yeah, so now he's like a zoo animal at our house. He
Yeah.
just except there's no sign saying you can't feed the baby.
Yeah.
So
Yet.
feed the yet, and then we got like a little tension gate going down the stairs,
Nice.
and I think he thinks it was pretty cool. So we got the whole little baby set up downstairs, so he won't be too hot. He'll be
There
fine.
you go.
And that's about the big stuff really happening
Then you're gonna put one of
around
those
here.
5-gallon buckets right next to the pen, and you're just gonna have the one hole just blowing it right in. Genius,
And
Drew.
he's gonna look like a model with some cold air blowing his hair back, and I'll just take pictures and send him off for a side hustle. Hey, you want some baby modeling pics?
Gerber baby, you sending it in.
It'd be perfect. It'd be perfect. Yeah. So I think that's really the biggest stuff I got going on. I guess if I could add anything, we planted some rhubarb earlier in the year, and we wanted to grow a little bit longer so it could like grow more, but it's starting to, I think, pollinate, so I'm afraid that it's ruined. So I think we missed our window, unfortunately. I really wanted to make some type of like rhubarb pie or crisp or strudel out of it, but uh, I don't know. Maybe I'll try it sometime this week and see if it's still good.
I don't know if you know this, Drew, but you can buy rhubarb at the store and still make some strudel or pie.
I mean, I don't love rhubarb that much, but
But
if it came from my yard, then I think I'd be fine with it.
you don't love rhubarb that much, but if you had to grow it and water it every day, it would be
Yeah.
perfect.
Hey, speaking of rhubarb, everything I see that's rhubarb flavored or like rhubarb flavored beer, it's always so expensive. And having a rhubarb plant now, I don't understand how because it's like a root. It will grow like a weed. It grows like a weed. So I don't know how something that's easy to grow is always that expensive to harvest and to put into things.
Couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I'm not a farmer, not a gardener. Maybe it's because it's only grown in certain places. I don't know.
As I keep talking about that little garden I have, there was a random onion that was growing sprouting in our cupboard. So I grabbed that and I chucked it into the garden and it's still sprouting, so I might be getting some onions out of there too. I don't know. I don't know. I They always have that saying like if you plant potatoes, you get potatoes. Maybe if you plant onions, you'll get onions.
Well, you'll have to keep me updated. That's quite a riveting thing to stay up to date on.
Maybe I'll have like a whole, a side channel or a segment on Instagram or something, just like Drew's gardening.
That sounds like a solid TikTok account or maybe like a YouTube channel.
But it's like gardening. So it's like people would go on there and be like, not for like great tips, but just probably to make fun of me. But I could have enough followers with that. I'd be fine with that.
Everyone's already done the gardening scene. The bad
Everybody's done
gardening
a
scene?
good one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's something there. Definitely sounds
I
like there's
mean,
something there.
it's territory that nobody's been at before. I'm pretty much a pioneer.
I'm not sure if people haven't been there by choice or if it just hasn't been thought of yet.
Yeah,
I'll
like
leave that up in the listener to decide.
my garden will have like one potato and like one onion, uh, a past harvest rhubarb.
Yeah. Some wilted lettuce and yeah, you'll be good to go.
This should have been a plant, but then it wasn't a plant.
Exactly, exactly.
So before I keep rambling on my gardening stuff, anything happening over at your place?
We had a birthday party this last weekend. Our son is officially a preschooler, I believe, by age. And then this upcoming weekend is grandma's marathon, which my wife is running the half and has made me feel extremely guilty for not signing up for it because as she goes out for a run, I just go and look down. I'm like, boy, this dad bod needs to get out on those get in those training shoes again and start running my butt off. So we'll see. Maybe I might pick up running some marathons or half marathons again in the near future because my wife's got me pretty motivated based on what's going on this weekend. But we'll see. We'll see.
I wonder if Jordan would want to go to that. I wonder if maybe we can make a day out of that. I know the years past she ran the full and the grandma's marathon for people that are not from Minnesota listening to this is in Duluth, Minnesota. It's right on Lake Superior. Beautiful, beautiful place. And they have a lot of bars around the finish line. So my wife was running, and then I could taste test things and stay hydrated while she was coming through.
They've got a Bloody Mary watch party for it, and I'm pretty fired up.
Bloody Mary watch, like you get a watch with it.
No, you watch the marathon.
Oh, watch the marathon.
Your
Okay.
watch party. No, you show up, you get a Bloody Mary and a free watch. What? No.
That'd be pretty sweet. I mean, they give away a bunch of stuff at that.
No,
See people give away like Red Bulls and
yeah,
stuff.
no, you just I forget where it is, but yeah, you can get a Bloody Mary, a beer, and you just sit and watch the marathon. Can't get much better than that.
That last time Jordan ran, there's on the phone they have like trackers on the runners so you can see where they are and when they're about to finish. I am convinced that that tracker was about 15 minutes, 10 minutes off from the actual app because when I was finishing my drink, went to the finish line looking for her, I could not see her at all. And then as I'm looking, she texts me saying like, "Where are you?"
Nice.
I'm like, "I'm waiting for you to cross finish line. Where are you?"
Why are you texting
She's
and
like,
running right now?
she's like, "I finished like 10 minutes ago. I'm over here." I'm like, "Oh boy,
Yeah.
like what's a marathon like? Was it 26 miles?"
Yeah, just over.
So she runs 26 miles. I have to catch her for a finish line, and I can't even catch that.
Yeah, you've got like 3 to 5 hours to figure out where you're gonna stand, and you totally blew that.
I was standing there, I was watching, and I had it all figured out other than being on time, I guess. So I'm glad she's not running because she does not let that down, I have to say.
Real question though, was the drink good? Like, it had to be a pretty good drink, right?
I mean, if I'm 100% honest, I was like a little bit under the weather from having a good drink the day before. So kind of hair of the dog, more or less. I don't know if it was 100% enjoyable.
You missed your wife finishing to not enjoy your drink. Sounds like a great heck of a day.
And I've not been let down from that to this day.
Nor should you, Drew. Nor should you.
I know I feel like I should be. Just it's in the past, forget about it. What, you crossed a finish line? I'm just kidding. It's a big accomplishment. I
Rafiki,
can't
it
believe I
is in the
missed it.
past.
It is in the past. I hope that last neighborhood, what's going on in the neighborhood wasn't too much of a ramble for you guys, and I hope that the episode brought some value to you. To do a little bit of recap after that long neighborhood rant. It was really going into a recession. What is a recession? Technically, an arbitrary number is 2 quarters of declining GDP. And with that, is we are potentially going into that right now. What can you do? We want to do some of that personal financial audit. We want to make sure we can look at our net worth again. We want to make sure we can reassess our debts. We want to put together and make sure our budget is locked down tight. And then once all of that foundational parts are set up, we can move forward with putting stuff into investing, getting the stock market on a sale. and really trying to not get our emotions into it and just continue with the plan that we already have. If you're with an employer sponsored program or you just wanted to invest by yourself, continue on that consistent dollar cost averaging going in. It'll leave you a lot less stress and you'll come out better in the end after this recession gets to back to where it needs to be. So, with all that said, if you got information out of this episode, you enjoy this information out of this episode, please give us a like, please give us a subscribe, and we can see you guys next week in the neighborhood.